Hey folks, David here. I'm going to talk about my 3659 cold dump car and the UCS Remote Control Track. So I got this at Joe's train stop in Warminster. He had a box of stuff that was like $3 each or 3 for $5. So I bought this. Originally, the hopper was in pretty bad shape. It was missing most of its paint and pretty messed up. So I sandblasted it and painted it. So this is the 3659 pre-war. They also made a post-war that was a 3559. When I bought it, it was in pretty rough shape. So it has these shoe contacts on the bottom here that operate the dump mechanism, and one of them was broken, and I got a new replacement truck for one side of them, and this side here I replaced the contact shoe on here, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So let me show you the inside here of how this works. So there is a simple relay right here. I had to skip ahead here a little bit. I took this cover off of there and the spring popped out and it hit the track, and I still had the track power on, and it heated up the spring and melted a hole there. I almost had a big disaster here. So here's the spring. I had to replace it with one from the smoke plunger. So that worked out, and that's just fine. So you can see how this works here. That goes down when you engage the relay here. It pushes down and tilts that hopper. So I'm not sure what this lever is supposed to do. I don't know if there's supposed to be a manual operation on that. So as you can see, this tilts back kind of further than it should. And I was trying to figure out how to fix that. In other words, if this would stay down, then that would keep it from tilting back. There's a stop here on this lever that hits that gear right there. So I don't know if that's in the wrong place or not. I was thinking about taking this apart and seeing if I can move that gear, but I can't get that gear off of there. So anyhow, for now, it's like this. It sits too far the other direction, but it's okay. It doesn't dump. So I used these balls here because they're easy to use. I didn't want to put coal or sand in here or anything like that and scratch this all up or make a mess. So it was just easier to do it that way. So let me put this back together and then I'll show you the rest. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me show you how this works then. Make sure the power's off on the power supply. Give it a little power. So that's a pretty simple operation. If you take one of these apart, do not use grease on here. The grease is kind of sticky and actually slows that down. So just use a light oil to get that moving. So that's how that works. So I'm going to put this back together and I'll be right back. put the cover back on it here. That's the cover. It's just 2 screws, one right here and one right there. So that's all there is to that. So this operates by these contacts here on the bottom. It's called a shoe, I guess, contact shoe or slider shoe right there. And when I bought this, actually one of these, this one here, the shoe was completely missing. There's nothing there. And the other one was all tore up. The coil in there and the whole, there's a metal, or not metal, it's like a circuit board. There's a plate in here that holds, if you can see that, see if I can get a light. So that holds the contact in there. So that connects to the other side of this coil here for the uncouple, and it also connects to this shoe here. So that's what powers the dump mechanism. So you can buy a replacement shoe, but I honestly don't recommend doing this because it is very difficult to get them in there. And you have this rivet, and you have to pound that rivet, and it's very difficult to do. I'll show you on this here how that works, if you can see that. So there's the other side of that shoe. So if there was a coil on here, that'd be almost impossible to get in there to flatten out that rivet. So that's how that works. So on this one, I replaced the shoe. This one here, I just replaced the whole truck. I got a truck for like $4 at Henning's. That's also where I got the shoes. So let me show you how this works with this piece of track. So there's a contact on each side there, and I'll explain that in a minute. I have a piece of styrofoam here because this piece of track is actually higher than this piece. So if you're going to use this, it's called a UCS Remote Control Track. So if you're going to use that, the rest of your track has to be elevated a little bit, or you have to cut a hole in your layout to put this in there. So as you can see, that sits up a little bit higher. So you have this UCS track here, and you have an uncouple and an unload option on there, and there's 4 wires to it. So what happens is, for the unload, you would have the positive on this side and a negative on this. Now this is AC, so there's not really a positive and negative, but there's a hot and a ground, I guess you could say. So that's how that works. So you can see you have one shoe that would be on this side, and then this shoe would be on that side. And that's how it gets connected, if that makes sense. Okay, so this piece of track has 4 contacts on it. The first one here, number 1, that's a negative or the ground, and it goes to here and to here. Those are tied together. The second one here goes to the buttons in here. I'll show you that. This one here is the hot wire that goes to the center track. This one here goes to this set of rails here. I'm sorry, this contact goes to this set of rails here. Okay, and that one goes to this set of rails. So what happens is, if you want to unload, then one of these will be hot and one will be ground. If you want to do an uncouple, of course you have the ground here, and then both of those will be hot. And I made a drawing here so I didn't confuse myself. So uncouple, you can see it's putting the hot wire here on both sides of these, and then you have the ground where the wheels are connected, so that will uncouple both connectors at the same time, if that makes sense. So this one goes to this set of rails, and this one goes to that set of rails. That's your hot, that's your ground. It goes to the outside. Now for the unload, you want one of these hot and one of these grounded. Actually, this side would be ground and that side would be hot. So that's kind of how that works. And you got a set of buttons in here, or levers. So this would be your unload and that would be your uncouple buttons. Now I'm not gonna, it's kind of complicated. I'm not gonna take this all apart, but I'll show you quickly what's in here. So you can see these different sets of contacts in here. So there's a contact on the end of these. So when you press the button, it pushes those together. Let's see, that's the uncouple. So it connects these two. And then the unload, which connects two sets of contacts together. You have to be careful when you take this apart because you see these spacers in here, and you have to make sure that you put them back in correctly or this will not work. So it's not really complicated, but there's a lot of parts there. You got to be careful what you're taking apart. And I am not going to take this apart because it's going to take me a long time to get it back together. Okay, so I got this back together, and as you can see, like I said, there's 4 wires on here, and I had to trace them out. So I put numbers. That's number 1. There are actually numbers on this piece of track. They're kind of hard to see, but they are numbered. So that's number 1 and that's number 4. So you just have to make sure you got that on there flat. And if you aren't sure if your controller is working, of course you can put wires on here and jumper them out and test them that way. That's why I made this drawing here, to figure out what's going on. So that's your controller, that's your track. That's called a Remote Control Track UCS. And this is your 3659 pre-war coal dump car. They did make a post-war version of this. It's a 3559. So there you go. All this documentation can be found online still. That's where I find it, so it's not hard to find all this. And if you press, let's see here. If you press the uncouple button, watch the coupler, and it uncouples both sides at the same time. And then we have the unload. Boom, there you go. Okay, thanks for watching. If you have any questions or problems with this track or this car, please put a comment there or send me an email. I'll be happy to help you out. You want to see that again? Cool. All right, thanks again for watching.